Welcome to today's Explainer. We are mapping out the deeply fascinating, highly detailed timeline of the afterlife found in Islamic tradition. We'll be impartially walking through source texts that describe the precise step-by-step journey of a person's soul immediately following their passing. Okay, let's dive into this.
So, when the heart stops beating, where does the soul actually go? It's a question that's captivated humanity for centuries, right? Well, according to the source material we're looking at today, death is not an abrupt end, not at all. Instead, it's the very beginning of a highly structured 40-day transition. We're going to break down exactly what this tradition says happens, from the sheer terror and mystery of the very first night all the way through the critical weeks that follow. Section 1. The Final Breath. This whole transition begins with an intense physical sensation. The texts describe a profound coldness creeping all the way from the tips of the toes right up to the throat. And this leads to a stark contrast in how the soul actually departs. The imagery here is incredibly visceral. For a believer, the soul flows out peacefully, literally compared to a drop of water just gliding out of a jug. But for a disbeliever, the extraction is agonizing. The text compares it to a thorny branch being violently ripped from wet wool, where absolutely every single cell feels the excruciating pain of separation.
But wait, right before this departure is completely finished, the source outlines a massive deception known as Shaitan's final test. In the overwhelming agony of death, the dying person experiences this unbearable, maddening thirst. The tradition states that a dark entity will appear to them, and here's the crazy part. It might even take the comforting, familiar form of their deceased parents offering a cup of cool water. The catch? They demand the dying person's faith in exchange. The texts heavily emphasize that only true lived faith, not just memorized words, allows someone to see through this illusion and actually resist it.
Once extracted, the soul embarks on a literal ascent, carried upward by angels toward the heavens. This is where the soul's name gets recorded, and a really sharp divide occurs. Righteous souls are welcomed through open gates, completely enveloped in the beautiful scent of sweet musk. Others, however, are rejected. They're recorded in the lowest earth, known as Sijin, and met with foul odors. Finally, the soul is sent back down to the earth, fully present for its own burial.
Which brings us to Section 2, Questioning in the Grave. Now, what's really interesting here is that during the funeral preparations, the texts state the soul remains highly aware. It's watching the mourners, smelling the soil, even feeling the drops of water as the body is gently washed. But right after the body is lowered into the dirt, and the final footsteps of the living fade into silence, the grave physically shakes. Enter Munkar and Nakir, the angels of questioning. The source describes these interrogators in terrifying, sensory-rich detail. We're talking towering giants with eyes flashing like lightning, voices roaring like violent storms, and hair literally dragging along the ground.
They are there to administer the ultimate test. It's a strict, rapid-fire interrogation. Who is your Lord? What is your religion? Who is your prophet? What is your book? What were your deeds? And the text is incredibly clear on one major point. You absolutely cannot fake this test. The answers don't just come from your brain or what you happen to memorize in a classroom. They depend entirely on how you actually lived your life. Your soul's physical state dictates its ability to speak the truth in that moment.
And the consequences of this test? They're severe, and they're immediate. If the answers are correct, the physical grave expands as far as the eye can see. A window to paradise opens up, and the person's good deeds literally manifest into a comforting, radiant companion. But if the answers are incorrect, the grave physically tightens, crushing the person until their ribs interlock. Their bad deeds appear as a hideous figure, and 99 venomous serpents are released into the dark. To give you an idea of the severity here, the source claims that a single bite from just one of these 99 serpents contains enough venom to render the entire earth barren until the end of time.
Section 3. The Realm of Barzakh.
Following the questioning, we transition completely away from the physical confines of the dirt grave, stepping into a vast metaphysical realm called Barzakh. Think of this as a transitional corridor. It's essentially a spiritual waiting room, bridging the physical world we know and the eternal hereafter. It's really important to understand that when the texts mention the grave in this context, they aren't just talking about a 6-foot hole in the ground anymore. They're talking about this entirely separate dimension where souls actively reside until the day of judgment.
A core principle of this realm is brilliantly illustrated by a famous quote from the Prophet following the historic Battle of Badr. Standing over the fallen, he said, "You cannot hear me better than they can, but they cannot answer." This beautifully highlights the distinct belief that the dead maintain a sharp, ongoing awareness of the living. They hear the spoken words of those who visit them, the rustle of clothing and the crunch of footsteps walking away.
The texts also describe a highly active social life within Barzakh. Yes, a social life. For believers, is described as a deeply comforting family reunion. Souls meet one another like birds gathering on a tree branch. They cheerfully greet newcomers, eagerly ask for updates about their living relatives, and enjoy the fruits of paradise, completely free from the exhaustion, grudges, or physical burdens of worldly life. Conversely, those who failed the test are imprisoned entirely alone in the suffocating darkness of Sijin, totally cut off and unable to communicate with anyone.
But the border between the living and the dead is surprisingly porous. The source details how souls can actually visit the realm of images, Alam al-Mithal, and appear directly to the living in what are called true dreams. Righteous souls are said to travel quite freely, sometimes even appearing as green birds, just observing the physical world. So while the living and the dead are separated by a veil of dimensions, the connection remains deeply intact.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds. Connections to the living.
During the critical 40 days following death, the source uses a really compelling metaphor to explain this whole dynamic. The deceased are waiting like passengers at a train station just one stop ahead of you. They don't have a signal to call back or reach out, but your gifts can still be sent down the line to reach them. The souls in Barzakh eagerly await news, prayers, and light from their families to help them adjust to this new reality.
According to Islamic teachings, even though a person's book of deeds permanently closes the second they die, there are 3 specific doors left wide open that continue to benefit their record. These are highly actionable takeaways for the living. First, ongoing charity, like building a well or planting a tree. Second, beneficial knowledge that the person left behind to educate others. And third, a righteous child who continually prays for them. These specific acts send literal light, comfort, and relief directly to the deceased.
The source also outlines specific theological hierarchies, neutrally showing how different life paths receive exceptional ranks in the grave. Martyrs, for example, are granted 6 massive rewards, including immediate forgiveness and total protection from any torment in the grave. Yet, interestingly enough, scholars are ranked even higher. The text states that on the day of judgment, the ink of the scholars will weigh heavier on the scales than the blood of the martyrs. It really highlights the immense, lasting value of seeking and sharing knowledge.
And finally, Section 5, the ultimate legacy.
As we look at the ultimate legacy someone leaves behind, the texts focus heavily on the physical power of the Quran in the afterlife, specifically Surah Al-Mulk. The text describes this chapter not just as beautiful words to be read, but as a literal, powerful shield. For the person resting in the earth, this specific prayer is said to stand as a physical defense mechanism in the dark, actively fighting to keep harm away and bring absolute peace to the soul.
The sensory imagery used to describe the impact of the living reciting the Quran for the dead is just incredibly vivid. During those critical first 40 days, this recitation directly alters the physical environment of the grave. It's compared to bringing beautiful, warm furniture into an empty, cold room. It serves as cool water poured over a burning fire, actively brightening the suffocating darkness and easing the deep, quiet loneliness of the newly departed soul.
So the crucial point is summarized in this incredibly stark warning directly from the text. You see your wealth divided among others. People are eating and drinking from the money you kept for yourself, and you stand there alone giving account for it all. Wow. It is a heavy, sobering reminder about the absolute futility of hoarding wealth and the inherent danger of prioritizing temporary worldly status over your eternal reality.
Which brings us right to our final thought. The source challenges us with this lingering, provocative question. When your final day comes, are the angels proud of you, or are the devils boasting about you? Because according to this highly detailed tradition, the everyday choices you are making right now are literally building and furnishing the grave you will inhabit tomorrow.